This is the Yamaha CP88. It's a great portable stage piano, but this video isn't going to be talking about the built-in sounds. Instead, I'm going to be talking about using it as a MIDI controller for a live keyboard rig using a laptop for all the sound sources. So why might you want to do that? Well, firstly, because in my experience, keyboards that are designed to be used as self-contained instruments tend to have better key actions on them than most MIDI controllers. But also in this case, the CP88 has a built-in USB audio interface, which means that you can just plug in one cable to your laptop and send the laptop audio out of the keyboard's audio outputs. You can attach the CP88 to your laptop with the 2 host port on the back, and then connect the audio outputs to your mixer or amp. There are XLR balanced outputs as well as unbalanced jack outputs. The audio interface part of the CP88 worked first time straight out of the box, which is great, and I've been running it with my M3 MacBook Air for a while now with no issues at all. I've got the sample buffer set to 96, but I can just about get it to run at 64 depending on how processor intensive the plugins are. The keybed action is the Yamaha NWGH. The NW part of that stands for natural wood, and if you look at the sides of the keys, you can see that there's some real wood in there. As far as I can tell from Yamaha, this is actually a real piece of wood that makes up the whole key, rather than just some wood veneer on the sides of the key. For me personally, I don't really see this as a huge advantage, but some people really love it. The GH part of the name stands for graded hammer, which means that the actual weight of that action gets a little lighter as you go up the keybed. I looked at the Roland RD88 in another video, which gives you the option to simulate this graded weight in software, and it actually works pretty well, but having it done with different physical weights in the keybed is obviously a more realistic feeling, and it works really well in the CP88. To me, it's definitely on the heavier side of actions that I've tried, but I can still play on it for hours without feeling any kind of fatigue. There's no escapement simulation, which I think is a good choice for a stage piano that's covering the grounds of both acoustic and electric pianos. The black keys have a pretty prominent texture to them, and the white keys are totally smooth. This took me a little while to get used to, but I don't really mind it. I'm kind of curious what piano they were trying to imitate with this effect. I don't think I've ever played a real piano with so much texture on the black keys, but let me know in the comments if you know differently. As far as I can tell, even though this is a triple sensor keybed, that triple sensor information is ignored on the MIDI out, which is a shame. The note on position is about 8mm below the resting position, and you don't have to raise the note up very much, only to about 5mm to send a note off, which makes it feel really zippy and for me makes it work for lots of different types of sound. The CP88 does a really good job of getting the velocity curve right straight out of the box, and it's pretty easy to play consistently if you want to, and easy to control the dynamics. There are a few different velocity curves to choose from, but that's as far as the velocity editing goes. There's none of the more fine-grained tweaks that you get in some of the Roland or Studio Logic boards. That being said, for me, the basic curves do a really good job. There's no evidence that the velocity values are getting quantized to less than 127 values, and there seems to be pretty good level of consistency between the black and the white notes, although it does get a little more difficult to keep that consistency as you move to the back of the keys. So all in all, the keybed feels really great, with the one exception that I find the corners of the keys pretty sharp. If you do a lot of palm-style glisses, it can really start to hurt your hand. In terms of physical controls that you can use with your host software, the CP88 will either really work for you or really not work. The great thing is that if you're setting up a host computer for mainly stage piano type sounds and effects, then this could work out great, because once you've enabled MIDI control mode, all the endless pots send out MIDI CCs which you can map to similar functions in your host software. So here I've mapped mix, feedback and delay time of the Valhalla Delay plugin to the delay pots on the CP88. And it's really nice having everything labelled for you on the front panel, as well as the fact that the LED rings around the encoders will update as you change songs so that you can always see what settings you've recalled. I'm using StageBox here, but the same would apply if you were using MainStage or Gig Performer. So that's the good version of the story. But if you're trying to map things that have got nothing to do with the layout and labelling of the encoders on the board, you might find it really frustrating to not just have banks of 8 encoders like you'd usually get on an actual MIDI controller. This isn't really a complaint about the CP88. I mean, I'm trying to use it for a purpose that it was never really designed for, but it's something you might want to consider. The live set buttons send out MIDI program change messages, so if your host software responds to those, you can use them to change songs. but there are only 8 of them, so they're not really that useful in this context if you've got a decent sized set list to go through. Also, weirdly, even though there are lots of different pages of 8 live sets, they always send out the same 8 MIDI program change messages, and I can't find a way to change that. There are pitch and mod sticks on the top left, which work fine, but if you're more used to traditional wheels, they'll take a little bit of getting used to. The pitch stick has got a little bit of a dead zone in the middle, but to be honest, less of a dead zone than most wheels that I've tried. I think Nord are the only ones that have managed to make a pitch stick with no dead zone. I really like the fact that there's a built-in power supply and that there's an extra foot switch input as well as 2 extra foot controller inputs. So it's easy to set up a general volume control pedal or a wah effect just by mapping those functions in your host software to the MIDI CCs that the assignable pedals send out. Overall, the build quality seems really good, but that solidity comes at the price of a pretty hefty £41 weight, and in a flight case it's getting close to being a 2-person lift. That being said, when you're playing it at a gig, it really feels like you've got a real substantial instrument in front of you, and I think that's really important. So yeah, I really like this. It feels great to play. It's got a built-in audio interface. It's got MIDI controls that will either really work for you or not, depending on your setup. The only thing that I think is really lacking in terms of using it with a laptop is a really easy way to change patches from the board itself. But that's not a super difficult problem to solve if you use an additional little MIDI assignable foot switch or another kind of small assignable MIDI controller. So let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you next time.